What if I told you that the most powerful thing you can do right now is nothing? What if the secret to fixing your broken focus, your anxiety, your overthinking, your lack of creativity, your emotional chaos, all of it is not another productivity app, not another supplement, not another morning routine, but something completely free, completely available to you at any moment, and something that almost nobody is actually using anymore? That thing is silence. And before you click away thinking this is just another relaxation video, I need you to stay, because what science has discovered about silence in the last decade will genuinely shock you. This is not about meditation. This is not about going to a forest or sitting cross-legged on a yoga mat. This is about something that is literally rewiring your brain every single day, whether you want it to or not, and most people have no idea it is happening to them. We live in the loudest era in human history. Think about that for a second. Right now, as you are watching this, there are notifications buzzing on your phone, music playing somewhere in the background, traffic outside, a fan humming, maybe someone talking in the next room. And this is completely normal to you. You have been living in this wall of noise for so long that silence has actually started to feel uncomfortable. And that discomfort, that weird, almost itchy feeling you get when it is too quiet, that is not peace. That is your nervous system screaming at you. That is your brain completely overstimulated, unable to remember what rest actually feels like. And the tragedy is, most people will never fix it because they keep feeding the noise thinking the noise is helping them cope. It is not. It is making everything worse. Let me take you back to something that happened in 2013. A researcher named Imke Kirsty at Duke University was studying the effects of different types of sound on mouse brains. She was comparing music, noise, and other audio stimuli, and almost by accident, she included a control group, mice that were exposed to 2 hours of silence per day. She expected nothing interesting from this group. Silence was just the baseline, the boring comparison point. But what happened completely changed what we thought we knew about the brain. Those mice exposed to silence, only those mice, started growing new brain cells in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of your brain responsible for memory, learning, and emotion regulation. New cells from silence, not from stimulation, not from enrichment, not from any kind of input, from the complete absence of sound. And when Kirsty saw these results, she ran the experiment again because she could not believe it. Same result. Silence was literally growing their brains. And now the question that should be burning in your mind is, what is it doing to yours? Here's what most people do not understand about the brain. Your brain is not a machine that needs to be constantly running programs to stay healthy. It is more like a muscle that desperately needs recovery time. When you are constantly feeding it noise, music, podcasts, TV, social media, conversations, traffic, you are essentially doing a workout with zero rest days. And anyone who knows fitness knows what happens when you train every day without recovery. You do not get stronger. You break down. You get injured. You plateau. Your brain does the exact same thing. Constant noise is cortisol. Constant noise is inflammation. Constant noise is cognitive breakdown happening slowly, quietly, invisibly, right behind your eyes. And this brings us to one of the most important concepts in neuroscience right now, something called the default mode network. The default mode network, or DMN, is a set of brain regions that activates when you are not focused on the external world, when you are just sitting quietly, when you are not doing anything in particular. For a long time, scientists thought this network was useless. They called it the resting state network as if it were the brain going to sleep, but they were catastrophically wrong. The default mode network is where your most important mental work happens. It is where you process your emotions. It is where you consolidate memories. It is where you make sense of your relationships. It is where your creativity lives. It is where your sense of identity is built and rebuilt every single day. And here is the terrifying part. This network can only fully activate in silence. When you are constantly plugged into sound and stimulation, you are literally suppressing the part of your brain that makes you a functioning, creative, emotionally intelligent human being. Think about the last time you had a truly great idea. I mean, a real insight, a moment where something just clicked. Where were you? I can almost guarantee you were not staring at a screen. You were in the shower. You were driving alone on an empty road. You were lying in bed right before sleep. You were on a walk with no headphones. You were somewhere quiet. That was not a coincidence. That was your default mode network finally getting the silence it needed to do its job. That idea that felt like it came from nowhere. It came from you, from the deepest, most powerful processing system you have. And you have been starving it of the silence it needs to function every single day. Now let us talk about stress, because this is where silence becomes almost miraculous. In 2006, a study published in the journal Heart found that 2 minutes of silence was more relaxing than listening to so-called relaxing music. The researchers measured this using physiological markers, blood pressure, heart rate, carbon dioxide levels, blood circulation in the brain. And across every single measure, silence won, not by a little, by a significant margin. The musicians and music therapists who funded the study were actually hoping to prove that their music was the most relaxing thing in the world. Silence embarrassed them. 2 minutes. That is how fast silence starts to repair your nervous system. 2 minutes of genuine quiet can begin to reverse the cortisol damage that hours of noise have caused. 2 minutes can slow your heart, lower your blood pressure, open up blood flow to your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain you use to make good decisions, to regulate emotion, to think clearly. And you have been walking around all day depriving yourself of 2 minutes. But why does noise stress us out so much in the first place? This goes back hundreds of thousands of years. Your brain evolved in a world where unexpected sounds meant danger. A loud noise in the jungle meant a predator. A crack in the silence meant something was wrong. Your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, is wired to respond to sound with alertness. Every unexpected sound triggers a micro-stress response. Your body releases a tiny pulse of cortisol. Your muscles tighten slightly. Your heart rate bumps up. It is so subtle you do not notice it consciously, but it is happening dozens and dozens of times every single hour you spend in noisy environments. And those micro doses of cortisol add up. They stack. By the end of a loud, busy, stimulating day, your body is swimming in stress hormones. Not because anything bad happened, but simply because your ancient brain heard too many sounds and treated every single one of them as a potential threat. This is chronic stress. This is why you feel exhausted even when you did not do anything physically demanding. The noise did it to you. And this chronic noise-induced stress is not just making you tired, it is making you sick. The World Health Organization has classified noise pollution as one of the most serious environmental health threats in the modern world, second only to air pollution. Chronic exposure to noise, even background noise you have learned to tune out, is linked to increased rates of cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, sleep disorders, depression, anxiety, and cognitive decline. These are not small risks. These are major, life-shortening health consequences that are being driven in part by the simple fact that we never give ourselves silence. And the maddening thing is that we have normalized this. We have accepted a world that is slowly making us ill, and we keep voluntarily adding more noise to it because silence feels strange and empty, and we are afraid of what we might think about if we stop distracting ourselves. Let us talk about that fear for a moment because it is real and it is important. When you sit in silence, real silence, thoughts come up. Not always comfortable thoughts. Sometimes it is anxiety about the future. Sometimes it is grief about the past. Sometimes it is a problem you have been avoiding. Sometimes it is a feeling you buried 3 years ago that suddenly has nowhere to hide. And our instinct is to grab the phone, turn on the TV, put in the earbuds, anything to crowd out those thoughts before they fully surface. And we think we are coping, we think we are managing, but we are not. We are stuffing, we are compressing, we are pushing things deeper and deeper into a pressure vessel that has no release valve. And one day, for no obvious reason, everything in that vessel explodes. And we call it a breakdown or burnout or a mental health crisis. And we are completely confused about where it came from. It came from years of never sitting quietly with yourself. It came from years of using noise as an escape from your own inner world. Silence is not empty. This is perhaps the most important reframe I can offer you today. Silence is not the absence of something. Silence is a presence. It is the presence of your own consciousness. It is the presence of clarity. When you sit in real silence and uncomfortable thoughts arise, those thoughts are not attacking you. They are visiting you. They are lining up to be processed, to be seen, to be released. Every thought that comes up in silence and is allowed to simply be there and then pass is a thought that no longer has any hold over you. Every emotion that surfaces in silence and is allowed to move through without being suppressed is an emotion that no longer needs to be managed. Silence is not where you fall apart. Silence is where you put yourself back together. The Stoic philosophers understood this. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in the ancient world, an emperor who commanded armies and governed millions, made a practice every single morning of sitting in silence before the demands of the day began. He wrote about it extensively in his private journal, what we now call meditations. He wrote about retreating inward, about the power of the inner citadel, about how a man who cannot sit alone with his own thoughts is not free regardless of how much power or wealth he has. And 2,000 years later, the neuroscience is proving him right. The most powerful habit of one of history's greatest leaders was not his strategy sessions or his battle planning. It was his silence. Now I want to talk about creativity because this one genuinely changes the way you work and live. Creativity is not a talent. It is not something you either have or do not have. Creativity is a neurological process. And like all neurological processes, it requires the right conditions to operate. The most critical condition for creativity is exactly what we have been talking about, the activation of the default mode network in silence. When researchers scan the brains of highly creative people during moments of insight and creative breakthrough, they consistently find one thing: massive activity in the default mode network. The creative insight does not come during intense focus. It comes during the quiet spaces between focus. It comes in the shower, on the walk, in the moment just before sleep, in the pause after meditation. It comes from silence. This means that every person who fills every quiet moment with a podcast or a playlist or a scroll through social media is systematically destroying their own creative capacity, not intentionally, not knowing it, but destroying it nonetheless. And there is a particular kind of silence that science has identified as even more powerful than ordinary quiet. It is called awe silence. This is the silence that happens when you are standing in a vast natural space, looking at a mountain range, or the ocean, or a night sky full of stars and chimerays, and you are just so overwhelmed by the scale of what you are seeing that all internal chatter stops. Researchers at the University of California found that regular experiences of awe silence, just a few minutes of genuine awe, dramatically reduced inflammatory cytokines in the body, increased prosocial emotions like compassion and generosity, and produced a measurable shift in perspective that lasted for days. Awe silence is silence on steroids. It is silence combined with the recognition of something vast and beautiful, and the effect on human psychology and physiology is almost drug-like, and you do not need to travel to a mountaintop to access it. You need to put down your phone and look at the sky. You need to go to a park and actually notice the trees instead of walking past them with earbuds in. You need to be present in a natural space for long enough for the awe to settle in. Let us talk about relationships now, because silence transforms them in ways that most people completely miss. We live in a culture that is terrified of silence in conversations. A lull in dialogue feels awkward, almost rude. We rush to fill every quiet moment with words. We over-explain. We overshare. We talk past each other instead of with each other. But the most profound moments in human connection happen in silence. When you sit with a grieving friend and say nothing but simply stay present, right? That silence communicates something words never could. When you stop talking in an argument and genuinely listen, and that silence creates the space for the other person to be truly heard, and in that being heard, most conflicts dissolve. When you look at someone you love and do not say anything but just let the quiet exist between you, that is intimacy at its deepest level. Silence is not the enemy of connection. It is the deepest form of it. Studies on effective therapy consistently show that the most healing moments in sessions are not the breakthroughs of insight or the clever reframes from the therapist. They are the moments of silence, the pauses after something difficult is said, the space in which a client simply sits with their own truth and allows it to be real. Good therapists are trained to protect silence, to resist the urge to fill it, because they know that what happens in those quiet spaces cannot be replicated by any technique or any words. The client is talking to themselves in those moments, and it is the most important conversation they will ever have. Sleep. We cannot talk about silence without talking about sleep, because the relationship between the two is profound and the implications for your health are enormous. Your brain's glymphatic system, the waste clearance system of the brain, is almost entirely inactive while you are awake and dealing with noise and stimulation. It activates during sleep, and specifically during the deep, slow-wave sleep stages. During these stages, your brain literally flushes itself. It pushes cerebrospinal fluid through the brain tissue and washes out metabolic waste products, including the amyloid beta plaques that are associated with Alzheimer's disease. Silence before sleep, a genuine wind-down period with no screens, no noise, no stimulation, dramatically improves the quality of this deep sleep. It is not just about how long you sleep, it is about how deep you go. And noise destroys depth. Even sleep noise, background TV, traffic, a partner's snoring, has been shown to reduce the percentage of time you spend in deep, slow-wave sleep. The people who are aging fastest cognitively are the people sleeping badly. And the people sleeping badly are largely sleeping in noisy, stimulation-heavy environments that their brains can never fully escape. Silence before and during sleep is not a luxury. It is brain maintenance. Now let us talk about something even deeper, the spiritual dimension of silence. And I want to be very careful here, because I am not asking you to adopt any particular belief system. I am talking about something universal, something that every major wisdom tradition in human history has recognized independently across all cultures and all centuries. Every single one of them: Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Taoism, indigenous traditions on every continent. Every one of them contains a practice of silence, not as one option among many, but as a central, essential, irreplaceable practice. Why? Why would completely different cultures with completely different theologies, separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles, all arrive at the same conclusion? Because they were all investigating the same thing, human consciousness, and they all discovered the same truth, that beneath the noise of the thinking mind, there is something else, something deeper, something quieter, something that does not have an agenda or an anxiety, something that simply is. And whether you call that God or the soul or pure awareness or the present moment or your deepest self, the access point is always silence. Always. You cannot hear that frequency when you are drowning in noise. The mystic Meister Eckhart wrote in the 13th century that nothing is so like God as silence. The Zen tradition says that the masters speak in silence. The Quakers built an entire worship practice around sitting together in complete silence, believing that truth arises not from the spoken word but from the space between words. The Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation in a cave, in silence and solitude. The Buddha's enlightenment happened in still, quiet meditation beneath a tree. Jesus regularly withdrew from his disciples to pray alone in silence, even at the height of his ministry when the demands on him were greatest. These are not coincidences. These are field reports from the deepest explorers of human inner experience, all pointing in the same direction. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is where everything real lives. And now, in this modern moment, we are systematically destroying our access to that depth. We are flooding every quiet space with content. We are filling every moment of potential reflection with distraction. We are creating a generation of human beings who have never sat alone with their own minds for more than a few minutes at a time. And we are watching the consequences unfold in the form of a global mental health crisis, the scale of which we have never seen before. Rates of anxiety and depression are at historic highs. Loneliness is at epidemic levels. Attention spans are collapsing. Creative output is declining, emotional regulation is deteriorating, and we keep looking for external solutions. More therapy, more medication, more technology, more content, when the most ancient and most scientifically validated solution is completely free, requires no equipment, no subscription, no expertise, and is available to every single person on earth at any moment. Silence. The answer has been there the whole time, and we have been talking over it. So what do you actually do with all of this? How do you begin to reclaim silence in a world that is designed to steal it from you? Because make no mistake, this is a design problem. Your attention is the most valuable commodity in the modern economy. Tech companies employ thousands of engineers whose entire job is to make sure you never experience a quiet, unstimulated moment if they can help it. Your silence is their enemy. Your distraction is their profit. Every notification, every autoplay, every infinite scroll, every algorithmically chosen piece of content that arrives at exactly the moment you might have paused, these are not accidents. They are weapons in a war for your attention, and most people are losing that war without even knowing it is being fought. The first step is simply to notice. Start paying attention to how much silence you actually have in your day. Most people, if they are honest, have almost none. From the moment the alarm goes off, often accompanied by music or a podcast, to the moment they fall asleep, often with the TV still on, every waking moment is filled with some form of audio input. Start there. Just notice it. Do not try to change it yet. Just observe the reality of how little quiet you actually have. Notice how quickly you reach for your phone when a moment of quiet arises. Notice the slight discomfort. Notice the impulse to fill it. Just observe, because you cannot change what you cannot see. The second step is to start very small. Do not try to sit in silence for an hour. Your overstimulated brain will rebel immediately and you will give up. Start with 2 minutes, literally 2 minutes. Set a timer, put down your phone, and just sit. Do not try to meditate. Do not try to think about anything in particular. Do not try to relax on purpose. Just sit in silence and let whatever happens happen. Thoughts will come. Let them. Emotions will surface. Let them. Discomfort will arise. Let it. Nothing that comes up in 2 minutes of silence will hurt you. And at the end of those 2 minutes, you will have taken your first real step toward reclaiming the most powerful tool your mind has ever had access to. The third step is to create what I call silence rituals. These are specific, protected windows in your day that belong to silence alone. Morning silence. Before you look at your phone, before you speak to anyone, before you turn on any sound, even 5 or 10 minutes of sitting quietly in the morning will change the trajectory of your entire day. The quality of your thinking, the steadiness of your emotions, the clarity of your decisions, all of it is dramatically affected by whether you gave your brain silence at the start of the day or immediately flooded it with stimulation. Evening silence, a wind down window before sleep with no screens, no noise, no input, will transform the quality of your sleep, and through better sleep will transform your physical and mental health in ways that will become obvious within weeks. And nature silence, time spent outdoors in natural environments without earbuds, without a phone in your hand, just walking or sitting and letting the natural soundscape of wind and birds and water do its work on your nervous system. Research on this is now extensive. 30 minutes of nature silence per week produces measurable reductions in cortisol, measurable improvements in mood and cognitive function, and measurable decreases in rumination, the repetitive negative thinking patterns that drive anxiety and depression. The fourth step is to learn to love silence, and I know that sounds abstract, but here is what I mean practically. The discomfort you feel in silence right now is not a sign that silence is bad for you. It is a sign that you have been away from it for too long. It is like the discomfort of going back to the gym after years away. The burn is not damage, it is restoration. Every time you sit in silence and resist the urge to fill it, you are building what psychologists call distress tolerance, the ability to sit with difficult feelings without immediately acting on the impulse to escape them. And distress tolerance is perhaps the single most important psychological skill a human being can have. It is the foundation of emotional intelligence. It is the foundation of patience. It is the foundation of wisdom. It is built in silence. It cannot be built anywhere else. I want to leave you with one final thought, and I want you to sit with it in the silence that follows this video. Human beings are the only creatures on Earth who actively seek out noise to avoid their own thoughts. Every other animal is attuned to silence because silence is survival. For us, silence has become the thing we most fear, and what you fear most is almost always what you need most. The version of you that is patient, creative, clear-headed, emotionally regulated, spiritually alive, genuinely present with the people you love, that version of you lives in silence, not in some distant future after years of practice. Right now, right beneath the noise, you are one quiet moment away from yourself. And the world will not give you that moment. The world will never stop making noise. You have to choose it. You have to protect it. You have to fight for it, because on the other side of that silence is the most important thing you will ever find. You.